So the Walton Centre it's quite small, but has a massive network. So we actually provide services across 80 sites outside of the main hospital. And we're also collaborative. So we run so we run the trauma network. We're next to a hospital that has an A&E and a helipad. So if you want to go down to the fourth slide, that'd be a brilliant help. Fabulous. And we'll come on to that now. Lovely. I think this is going to work. Fabulous. So I'll stop there. I'll come on to, I'll just finish on the Walton Centre. So it's got a really privileged position. There are only 12 specialist trusts in the country. So we've got all the benefits of an A&E without running it. It's an outstanding trust, so it should be. And it's also Investors in People Gold. It's got, so in Cheshire and Merseyside, with it, you know, all the staff surveys always say it's you know, I think, what did it say in the last one? We came top of recommended as a place to work. So we've got something right culturally. A lot of it is absolutely nothing to do with me. I inherited some great culture. So what have you got to do? So about 2017, I recognised that we weren't really getting the ideas coming forward in a centre of excellence that you'd expect. So what on earth do you have to do? So the first thing is to clearly signal intent and tell people. So we organised a clinical senate. We had 80% of the consultants attend, and the consultants, effectively, when I asked them why have you got innovative ideas, they basically said, you've got loads, but what's the point? You haven't got any money. And of course, it was the beginning of the journey, really. So I then kind of got the medical director to initially lead a group on innovation. We got some money. We got a clinical lead, a rehab lead called Shagafay Mahendran, and I shoved innovation to my title. So we clearly signalled that what's the point of a centre of excellence if we're not innovative? It has to be in the strategy. It's now in the centerpiece of the strategy. I'd love to say that was the original idea, but I looked at one of the trusts that I thought had done it best, which was the Christie. And if you look at the Christie, they've really focused on innovation, med-ed, and research. All three are now in my portfolio, and we tried to connect them because of the synergies between them. Leadership's critical. On a number of levels. Behaviour I'll come back to in a minute, but literally our chief exec is leaving, so I was just rewriting the job description this morning and doing a timeline, and I was joking with a group of people that what we need for the next chief exec is a psychopath or a sociopath, and none of them laughed, because of course often what you get is you get the kind of people that Dave Sweeney was describing on the train. They're in the grip. Often we bring out the worst of them in those positions, and often that particularly if you're in a trust that's in special measures, you know, these people are working 50, 60 hours a week, not a lot of pleasure and enjoyment in the workplace, and they are, it's very hard to expect these people to be benevolent, positive leaders who are creating the right conditions. And finally, I'd say something right at the beginning about aligning processes. And I'm not going to talk about complexity theory. I'm a fan. I particularly like Patrick Hoverstadt, if anyone's into how you wire up organizations. But every process has to be aligned to your purpose. And a really simple example would even be something like your expense claims, where you can say every consultant, every nurse, every healthcare assistant, every manager, every back office person has to complete a travel claim in the days when we used to travel, or an expense claim within a month. If you don't do it within a month, you'll lose it. And of course, what that does is that says that half a day every month, people stop what they're doing to do this claim, rather than saying, do your job, deliver your service to support staff who are patient facing, deliver your service to support patients, and we'll sort out travel as and when you can, and we'll create a bit of trust. If you have aspirations, but your processes aren't aligned, the processes will win. And also people can be cynical and not believe you. Can you believe that? Next slide, please. So let's start the key thing. So bullying, civility, zero tolerance. You cannot bully people directly or indirectly and expect them to be creative. And it's a really important thing. Now, I'm not saying organisations, we have had issues that are well known within the NHS, but actually, let's be really clear. Often, where our trust is IIP Gold, that does not mean that everybody's experience is gold. Your experience often depends upon the line manager you're with. In fact, I was slightly late to the pre-call. In fact, I missed it because I was with a manager who's dealing with some people who are all working from home remotely. We've asked them to, and he is insisting on having a 9 o'clock Monday morning meeting, slightly controlling. It is sending out a plethora of emails at after half four on a Friday. Kind of feels like, what are you doing? And spectacularly sent an email about well-being at 10:30 last Wednesday evening. So it's about, it's the effects of behavior. Often people aren't intentionally doing it, but the effect is it dampens people's spirits. Clearly, there's overt bullying. We see it in our res data. We see it in our WDES data. And that has to be jumped on. And even if you can't move people on, you've got to challenge them, or people won't believe you. Which takes you into my key point, which is, put up Hertzberg's hygiene and motivator factors, but motivational theory is critical. You have to build groups of people who trust you and are motivated. To do that, you need to create workplace conditions. Those workplace conditions are classically motivational. Every study I've ever looked at on motivation has said two things. One is, don't bully people, don't exclude them, don't do those things that make people paranoid or unhappy in the workplace. And secondly, give them autonomy over their role, within boundaries, but give them autonomy. People have to feel that they're in control of their role and they're thinking about it. Then suddenly you'll find that people start to be creative. Next slide, please. I'll bounce on, don't worry, I'll hit my deadline. Practical things to do, run workshops. I got the innovation agency in, to run a hackathon. We'd run loads of stuff. We created a pipeline of ideas. Got over 100 really, really good ideas. One of them might be about, say, something like dementia, might be number 85 in the pipeline. If somebody comes to make a charitable donation, says, I'll give you 100,000, but you've got to spend it on dementia, suddenly it goes to number 1. All the time, I've got a part of ideas. Last year, we're the first trust in the world outside of Australia to have a multi-ton rack scanner. It's basically, it's as big as a room. It can take anybody of any size. You cannot be too overweight to get in there. It can do people in situ in wheelchair, which is really important for looking at spines when people are sat down in their wheelchair. Groundbreaking stuff. We knew we were looking for it because that was one of the innovation ideas. Suddenly Siemens had produced this bit of kit. We're the second trust in the world to have it. The idea of elevator pitches is really important because you need to be able to move quickly. You work through a complex idea. I can sit down with 3 spinal experts, all of whom can argue to be the leading person, certainly in Britain, arguably Europe. It's OD techniques to get them to agree what is the idea that they're all going to agree to. And I would also say, if somebody nicked my innovation pipeline, I'd just go and get them all in the room again and create another one. New funding streams, really important. I'm doing a little thing because I'm over research. It's quite important. We've got a database, say, on spinal implants. We've got one of the biggest in Europe. We've actually got a database on the performance of spinal products for Stryker, for Johnson & Johnson, for Medtronic. They are prepared to pay ready money for access to summaries of that data. That money coming in takes the pressure off everybody and people aren't going innovation is wishy-washy. The charity is a bonus, but I've obviously focused it principally onto the charity. Next slide, please. I've got 2 left. Biggest inhibitor. So obviously, if people are oppressed or don't feel encouraged, you don't allow people like Dave Sweeney or gen to flourish in your organization, that's an inhibitor. The other really big one, and it's come out top in the last 2 times we've been assessed for investors in people, which is the industry standard, is corporate modesty. Loads of people don't realize they've got a brilliant idea, or they're just modest. Now, the speakers you've had this afternoon wouldn't understand that, but actually it's amazing. I'll just give you a really quick example. I play cricket still, just about. I'm of an age where I have to be really nice to the skipper, Ganesh Bhavakati. Ganesh leads in complex rehab across the trust. We know each other really well, be in changing rooms together, we chat, at least once a week, not about work. And I found out that he'd written an article in The Guardian, no less, on exoskeletal robotics and artificial intelligence, because the comms team spotted it and told me. He didn't tell anybody. He's bright, he's a genius, he cracks on, he has no concept of showing off. Because the downside of that is people don't quite know how good we are. And at the time of system change, the kind of change that certainly Dave and Helen are involved in, you need to be raising your profile. And then final slide, he says that's probably, okay, all right, I won't rush through, but I'll take you on to the final slide. And just before I tell you about my favorite change model, what I would just say is that often the most talented people can actually be introverts, and we have to create conditions. So I'll just tell you about one more consultant in this trust. So we've got a consultant called David Lawson. You won't mind me mentioning, I'm sure. The pop band Lawson are named after him. He's quite famous in terms of, he saved lead singer's life, is my understanding. So whenever they come to Liverpool, he obviously goes. But he rates off the scale with all the students. He's really superb at that. He does complex brain surgery. I asked him how he relaxed. He's a chess grandmaster. Now, people like that you have to drag that information out of them. If Dave or I had an article in The Guardian, you'd see the plane flying about with a banner on it letting people know. So it is just about corporate modesty, be mindful. So let's have a little bit of theory. So there's loads and loads and loads of theoretical frameworks. But fundamentally, find one that makes sense to you. The one that I've used in local government, and I certainly used in AGMA, which was the 10 local authorities that predated the system that came together in Manchester, that came across it in Greater Manchester, was Burt Litwin, and I've used it here. And it's got a lot of stuff on it, but I only want you to look at 4 boxes. If you look at the transformational factors along the top, so I'm only going to look at 4 boxes. It's got McKinsey's 7 S's in there and all sorts of things that you need to be cognizant of and you need to be mindful of. But if you look at those top 3, mission and strategy, if you don't tell people where you're going, then clearly, clearly they won't know that. So, the famous examples, Tesco's with their kind of like their strapline, get Sainsbury's, but it's stuff, if you can make it succinct and powerful, it would align bizarrely. I'm now giving a theoretical credence to Dave Sweeney, something I never thought I'd do. But Dave's point about the hook, if you don't believe in it, we can all fake it in work. We spent our lives. Anyone can get a job they hate, but to really believe in something, and the mission and strategy is clear, I can say I can stay here. Next, leadership, but the leadership has to really believe in it. If we're going to be innovative about doing groundbreaking work in spine, in pain, in neuroscience, then we better bloody believe it, and we better back it up with our plans and our aspirations and the way we behave. Otherwise, no one will believe it and just think, funnily enough, that I'm and the other members of the exec team and other people in management are just public sector fat cats, come for the salary. And then finally, on that line, organisation and culture. So you set up in the way we've talked about, the culture, comes from the organisation, it comes from having values, but most models for organisation culture are great, most sets of values are great. You drive it through, you put it in your appraisal, you put it in your strategy. But if you don't stamp out the negative forces, the hygiene factors, if people's working conditions are poor, their management is poor, if they don't feel valued, then anything you do positive is 50 times harder. And finally, I just take you right down to the very bottom one, which says individual, organizational, and performance. In the original model of this, that is really talking about behaviors. Individual is behavior. So you need your results. So EFQM is the classic, isn't it? People results, patient results for us, private sector, it'd be customer results, societal results, and overall organizational results. On an individual level, it's behaviors. It's how I do my job. And if you've not got an appraisal system that recognizes that, so I may not achieve my objectives, but it's because people in the system have blocked me. It may be that funding got withdrew. It's those kind of things. But actually, what you can hold me really to account for is the way I behave out and about. Have I got time for people? Am I going to be the person like Dave who actually takes time out to talk to people? Because that's what our job is, really, to help people in a hospital to be the best that they can so that they can support the patients.